Good afternoon and welcome to the March 29, 2024 meeting of the Rotary Club of Beavercreek. I want to thank Brian Lampton and who jumped in? Danny? Yes, Danny Jarvie for greeting us today. Eric Marcus for serving as Ticketmaster and setup today. Pete Bales, Mark Weinstein, Mike Zwick for our great programs, and Jim Gundel for taking care of the website. Danny, would you come forward for an invocation?
Well, good afternoon on this beautiful Friday. Would you join me in prayer? So, Holy Creator and Sustainer of all life, in our pursuit of our secular, help us not to forsake the sacred. We look to you for the meaning and fulfillment to life. Bless now this meeting of Rotarians as we thank you for our food. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Danny. Junior, can you give us a secretary's report? Tell us how many people are here.
43%.
43%.
Yeah, 3,000. We'll give her guests.
We have a bunch of guests. Beth, want to introduce our guests up there?
Sure. So I have our daughter Emily, who is her official first day of spring break. Emily. And then Vivian, who we are going to snatch from the Zenith Club, and she's going to move over to Beavercreek.
Shannon's not here yet, but Abby and Brianna here today. And then I have Junior and Jacob, my wife and Mayor today.
All right. So the Sergeant at Arms that since my membership has received the most robust round of applause when they come to the podium is back for a second appearance. Elizabeth Cusack. Sergeant at Arms, that's the equivalent of like 10 minutes standing ovation.
I think y'all need to lower your expectations here. Happy Friday, everyone. It's March 29th, and I always like to start off with a little bit of Rotary information. March is Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene Month for Rotary International. And as you're aware, that clean water and basic hygiene and proper hygiene is fundamental to human rights. Yet 2.2 billion people lack access to adequate sanitation, and 748 million don't have access to clean water. And Rotary International addresses that. And they do that in this month, and they honor it by highlighting the different projects that they have. Just a little bit through the numbers. Rotary Foundation has projects going on right now to address this issue in 95 different countries. And the largest grant that is available for this initiative is $800,000, and the smallest ranges to $30,000. So you, as a Rotarian, have the opportunity to make an impact in this area. Sitting here in Beavercreek, you can make a donation to the Rotary Foundation, knowing that your money would be going towards helping clean communities worldwide. So March 29th, today in history. Every day is a holiday, as I like to say. So it's Good Friday, as you're probably aware. It's National Mom and Pop Business Owners Days. So celebrate all of those small local businesses. It's Knights of Columbus Founders Day. This was founded in 1882. Today is National Lemon Chiffon Cake Day. And a lemon chiffon cake was invented in 1927 by a baker by the name of Harry Baker. I don't think I would try any cake by the name of Harry Baker. Today is also National Smoke and Mirrors Day. The origin of this is unknown, but it's likely intended to promote the appreciation of the art and skill of magicians who specialize in illusions. Today is National Vietnam War Veterans Day. We commemorate and honor all the men and women who fought during the Vietnam War. Every day this year since 2017, this National Day was recognized and will continue to be on March 29th. Day in history, 1790, John Tyler. Does anybody know what president he was, what the number was? The 10th president was born. In 1795, Ludwig von Beethoven had his debut performance as a pianist in Vienna. Ironically, in 1827, on the same day, Beethoven was buried. He had passed away on the 26th of March. Anybody know how many times Beethoven was actually buried? It wasn't once. 3 times. Did somebody say 3?
Yeah.
Oh, I heard 3. Yes, he was actually buried 3 times. The first one is in 1827. And then in 1863, the burial site was redone. And he was put into a metal coffin at that time. And then that cemetery was shut down in 1873, and he was buried again and moved to a different cemetery in Austria. So, fun fact. In 1848, Niagara Falls stopped flowing for 30 hours due to an ice jam in the river upstream. In 1852, Ohio makes it illegal for children under the age of 18 and women to work more than 10 hours a day. Yes. In 1929, Herbert Hoover, the president, put in the first telephone installed into the desk at the Oval Office in the White House. In 1945, movie star James Stewart promoted to full colonel and one of the few Americans to rise from private to colonel in just 4 years. In 1961, after 4.5-year trial, Nelson Mandela was acquitted of treason. And in, already mentioned this, in 1973, the US troops evacuated Saigon as the United States ended its involvement in the Vietnam War. In 1978, the variety TV show Carol Burnett last aired on CBS, and it won 25 Emmy Awards. In 1985, Wayne Gretzky broke his own NHL record with 126 assists. And then again, ironically, the same date in 1999, he retired. I was told that I get to tell funny jokes, so I am going to attempt to tell some jokes. An old man and a 20-year-old were paired together at a golf tournament. They're playing in a long par 5 that dog legs around some tall trees. As the 20-year-old sets up his tee shot to hit onto the fairway, the old man notes, "When I was your age, we used to hit over the trees, not around to the side." So the 20-year-old didn't want to be shown up, so he adjusted and tried to hit over the trees, but he couldn't clear them and loses his ball. He tries again. Again, he loses the ball. 3rd time, tries to hit it over the trees, doesn't do it. He said, "How did you do this?" And the old man looked at him, "When I was your age, trees were only 6 foot tall." Okay. My grandfather says to me, "When I was a boy, you could walk into the grocery store with $2 in your pocket and walk out with a loaf of bread, a dozen eggs, and a butter." But now there are just too many cameras. No attorney jokes, I promise, Dave, but I will do a blonde joke in honor of Dawn. This young blonde decided she wanted to pay off her bills. She started to go door to door in her neighborhood and asked if anyone needed help so she could earn a little money. She knocks on the first door and an elderly man answers. "Hi, I'm trying to make some extra money to pay off my bills. Do you have any odd jobs I could do for you?" "Sure, you could paint my porch." She jumps up and jumped down for joy. "Great, how much will you pay?" "I'll pay you $1,000. She said to the old man, "Great, I'll do it. Paint rollers and brushes are in the garage. Knock on the door when you're done and I'll pay you." The old man goes back inside and the young blonde bounds off to the garage. "Does that poor girl know that the porch wraps all the way around the whole house?" asks his wife. "Of course she does. You've heard too many blonde jokes." Just at that moment, hears a knock at the door. The old man answers it. "I'm all done," she said. I had enough paint to do 2 coats. And by the way, that was a Lexus and not a Porsche." So today's celebrations, we had birthdays in the club. Stephen Brown, not here. He had a birthday on the 27th. And we had a couple of wedding anniversaries. Tony Oberholzer, her husband Walt, had an anniversary on the 25th. And then Shannon Graham, your parents, and Brenda celebrated, do you know how many years? 21 years, that's right, on the 29th. So today is fine. If you've ever been to Niagara Falls, that's $1. If you have not watched a hockey match this year, that's $1. If you did not work a day over 10 hours this week, that's $1. If you can demonstrate what Carol Burnett did at the end of the show, anybody do it? Yep, that's $1. Do you know what it means?
Yeah, their mother or something.
Her grandmother, right? That's $2, Bob. And if you were late, $2. If you're not wearing your Rotary pin, that's $1. And finally, do we have anyone who has served in Vietnam? Yes.
Go, Danny, yeah.
No fine, but we want to pay respect to you and give you a round of applause. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. President for happy bucks.
You know what's that? What's that? Right up there on the
Well, I have the first happy buck and happy that Emily could be here today. Who else has happy bucks? All right, Jerry.
I have a real happy buck. I got a call last night about 5:30, grandson up in New Hampshire. And he said, "Oh, Pa," he said, "today is decision day." And I said, "What are we making a decision on?" He said, "I just got my last college application back." And he said, "I'm going to go to the University of Alabama this year."
Well, okay.
So I had a nice scholarship to go with it, so.
Nice. Congratulations. All right, who else has a happy buck for us? Eric?
I have a happy buck. It was announced earlier this week that despite the fact they weren't going to inspect the lake until April Fool's Day, Indian Lake this is, after the tornado, and reopen the park, they announced its opening today, so I can go boating. I hope.
I had a client in the office today that was going up to her Indian Lake house. All right, who else has a happy buck? Okay, just one here. Okay, anybody else have a happy buck or announcement? Any announcements? Keep an eye on your Rotary email for some announcements about Flags for Heroes. And we're extending for 1 week the nominations for the Community Service Award. So I'm trying to remind you of that too, but get that in by next week. All right. So ticket drawing. For the chance to draw Queen of Hearts, 339217.
Oh, I got it.
All right, go James. Hold it down. Absolutely wrong. Yeah, that is so fun.
Yeah.
Junior, trying to pick a card.
Yeah.
Junior, go to the card.
Pick one card. Any card.
Get it?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Much of the answer. Which one?
Queen, it's a queen. Oh, okay, space.
What's that one at Joker?
All right. I have the opportunity to introduce our speaker and one of our own, Brandon Huff, and I'm going to try and do this from memory, absent any research. Brandon, who's originally from Florida, and as you know, is an avid and competitive runner. Is a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy, served in the U.S. Air Force. He came to us when he was the director of the U.S. Air Force Marathon. She did a great job and guided them through COVID. And then followed his passion into the nonprofit world and is currently CEO of an environmental nonprofit group. And he's going to tell us today about some of his passions related to nature. Brandon Hush. Yeah. Forgot to say the most important thing is that Brandon and Ashley just welcomed into the world Clark. So he has now the opportunity to be a girl dad, in addition to Hunter, his son, who's growing every day and telling him what to do. Hunter did learn the word yes this week, which was a very nice change of pace. I asked him the other day if he wanted to go shower, and he said yes, and like, I think my jaw almost hit the floor. Even when he wanted something, it's just been no. Okay, let's see. Let's see how we do this. Which one is slide over? Oh. Down. Okay, and it looks like I can play two here. We'll give it a moment. Okay, well, I wish CEO was my title, executive director, not as close CEO. But I work for Homegrown National Park. I'll tell you a little bit about that. I work from home, which is awesome. The guy who's on the slideshow right there, that guy, that's Dr. Doug Tallamy. He's a professor of entomology at the University of Delaware. He's authored 4 books. One is a New York Times bestseller called Nature's Best Hope, which came out a few years ago. And it's the book that got me into all of this. So it was an amazing bit of serendipity that I ended up working for Doug. He's still on the board. And I was taking a bath last year with Hunter, and I yelled, Ashley, you must go get Hunter. And she said, what's wrong? I said, I need to apply for a job. Dr. Doug Tallamy's organization is hiring their first executive director. So I just was hoping to get far enough in the interview process to talk to Doug. He's kind of a rock star. The closest thing entomologists have ever gotten to being a rock star. If you care about biodiversity, he is a very well-known person, very he appears all the time in like NPR and New York Times, WAPO, etc. So yeah, this is his organization, and we want to talk about the grassroots solution to the biodiversity crisis.
Is it clicking?
Negative.
Let me see. I think somebody left it on.
We can slide over. Yeah.
Recording in progress.
Sorry. Okay, here we go. Slide over. All right. Click on to the slideshow. You need to click onto the slideshow. You're probably clicked on the Zoom now. You can probably just slide over. Okay, who knows what bird this is? Bob White. It's Bob White. Can you hit play?
Thanks. Where's play?
You just click it. So you don't. Oh, the volume comes through. We'll see. Sure. Yeah.
Here.
Oh, yeah, it was a delay there. There's a delay between it. He'll do it again. I filmed this in my yard. There you go. It's definitely off. But 2.5 years ago, I filmed this in my yard. When he showed up, I didn't know what he was. I had never seen one. I didn't know anything about him. But that's a northern Bob White. I asked, when was the last time anyone in this room heard a northern Bob White?
Just,
Yeah, science just now. So. But who in this room used to hear him a lot? Back in the day. It used to be very common in Ohio. They're now closing in on extirpation. Extirpation is what is known as local extinction. It's when a species is no longer found in an area but still found in other areas. Next slide.
oh, it's working.
Oh, now it's great. There we go. One more. There we go. Who knows this bird is? Come on. You got it. I'm looking at you. This is an eastern whippoorwill. Eastern whippoorwill. You've probably seen a lot of roads called whippoorwill. And they get their name like the Bob White, and they're called whippoorwill. Whippoorwills used to be very common. They're down about 70% now. Oh, that's a laser. There we go. Fireflies. Everyone should know fireflies. You probably remember them growing up. They were everywhere. Have you noticed they seem to be a lot less common everywhere you go? Go over to my house in summer in June. I always like June. June is when the catalpas bloom, and the catalpas bloom is right when the fireflies make their grand return. I live across from 10 acres of protected. The whole wood lot is filled with fireflies. Our whole backyard is filled with fireflies because we have good habitat. The monarch. Wow. Monarch. That's a monarch on a New England aster. Monarch populations, the western population is down about 97%. Overall, monarchs are down about 80%. They're a federally endangered species now. So if you'll notice, all these were common species and they're becoming a lot less common at a very rapid rate. So 1 million species face extinction. 40% of plants face extinction. There are 3 billion fewer birds in the United States than there were just 50 years ago. That is a number that most of us probably cannot comprehend. The bird of your photo, by the way, is a painting of a Bachman's warbler, last seen in the 1980s, declared extinct last year. They liked the same habitats that the ivory-billed woodpecker did. Ivory-billed woodpecker has been, they're still playing games with it. It's extinct. It hasn't been seen since the 1940s. And many species have already gone extinct. So this list is all the ones that were listed as extinct last year. 23 more species added to the extinction list. There's one at the top left. You might be like, that's not English. You're right, that's Hawaiian. Hawaii is the extinction capital of the world. It's a very sad place to visit. Most people go and they think it's beautiful. It's pretty much a hellscape. If you know what you're looking at, the whole island's been invaded and taken over. And so species go extinct there at a rate that is just absolutely astounding. Bachman's warbler, one I just showed you. Some bats went extinct. Scioto mad tom is a catfish. Could only be found in Scioto. It's gone. And then you'll notice here too, if you look in the bottom corner here, there we go. All those are mussels. Fun fact about the United States, we are the mussel capital of the world. There are over 300 species of mussels found in the United States. That's more than anywhere else. 8 of them went extinct. 2023. Michigan has 45 species of mussels. 32 of them are endangered. So why is this all happening? This is E.O. Wilson. He passed away in 2021. He was called the Darwin of time. He was up there with David Attenborough in his fame. He wrote 29 books. Many of them are really wonderful, like Half Earth. His expertise was ants. He discovered hundreds of species of ants in his life, and he always loved the little things that he sent to the world. He proposed this idea that he called HIPPO, the 5 reasons why species go extinct and why species decline. H is habitat loss, I is invasive species, P is human population, P is pollution, and O is overharvesting of resources. Notably missing among these is climate change. Climate change is not a major driver. If climate change was solved today, the biodiversity crises would still be happening. It would not slow down at all. Climate change is just like another kind of bad hand being dealt, and it exacerbates these main 5 issues. And we mostly focus on H and I, habitat loss and invasive species. This is exactly what a biodiversity crisis looks like right here. Most people would see this and they think this is beautiful, lovely homes. If you're looking at this, all I see is there is no habitat here for anything that we know and love. Fireflies will not live here, bobwhites will not live here, whippoorwills will not live here, and monarchs will not live here. And those are just 4 examples I use, but pretty much nothing lives here. This is what we call a hellscape. And this is also what a biodiversity crisis looks like. I could have taken this photo on Fairfield on the way in. This is literally Fairfield. I mean, you drive into Fairfield, right down the main strip, Bradford pears. Bradford pears are so invasive that our state was the first to actually make them illegal, and other states have now followed. We can't grow them, you can't sell them, you can't distribute them. Yet there's 6 of them right up here, right here in front. That is a problem. It was just down in Miamisburg an hour ago, and this whole corner lot, Bradford pears, they've taken over everything. So we have to start thinking about what does conservation look like when we have habitat loss and invasive species driving these major problems. We have to think of the fact that we have to coexist with nature. It's not really an option. We have to have nature. Half of these slides are my boss's slides, and he's an entomologist, and he can tell you about every one of the species you're about to see. I am not an entomologist. I tell people I am not an ologist. I'm not a biologist, ecologist, entomologist, or ornithologist. I'm a nonprofit expert. That's why they hired me. So I think this is an evening primrose moth, and if you want to see evening primroses on your property or evening primrose moths, you must have evening primrose on your property. So living with nature is not an option. It's really the only option we have left at this point. Zebra moth, lazuli bunting, we have those in the Southwest, not here in Ohio. We've always kind of focused on conservation where people were not. But I would ask you right now, if I said we need to preserve 500,000 acres of land in Ohio, how would we do it? Does anyone know where we can find 500,000 acres of land in Ohio that's ready to be preserved? Doesn't exist. It just does not exist because people are everywhere now. 80+% of land east of the Mississippi is privately owned. Out west, it's about 70%. So we have to preserve and restore nature where people are. We need to find ways for nature to thrive in human-dominated landscapes, and it can. I think this is a Prometheus model. By the way, my boss took all these. He bought a 10-acre farm in southeast Pennsylvania, like southeast Pennsylvania, the far corner there. And it was nothing, and he's restored it, and he's counted over 900 different species of moths and butterfly, which moths and butterflies are collectively called Lepidoptera. So 900 species of Lepidoptera on his property, which is kind of amazing given when he inherited it, it was a destroyed 10-acre farmland. So I like this quote from Rachel Carson, who's considered like, you call her the godmother of the modern environmental movement. She wrote Silent Spring in the 1960s. In nature, nothing exists alone. Man is a part of nature, and his war against nature is inevitably a war against himself. So we need biodiversity. It's not an option. We all live here. We all need it. Oh, that's something like moon moth. Can't remember. They all just start to look like brown moths. But if I said that to him, he'd have a stroke. So we focus a lot on lawns because the amount of lawn you have at your property determines whether rain infiltrates the soil or it becomes stormwater runoff. We live in Beavercreek, stormwater runoff is a major problem. This is why we have runoff problems. Whether you're adding nitrogen, phosphorus, and herbicides and insecticides to your local watershed, because most people who have lawns like this are adding a lot of chemicals to their lawn. And lawn's not even native, by the way, it comes from Europe. So we have to poison the yard to do everything we can to make it look like this. And nothing lives here, by the way. And how much carbon you're adding to the atmosphere every time you mow. These roots are short, they're about 3 inches on turf grass. They don't hold and sequester carbon. So how much land or how you landscape determines whether you're supporting the pollinators that we need or eliminating the resources they need. This is a rusty patched bumblebee. This is a species you may not think of when I listened for earlier. Rusty patched bumblebees used to be one of the most common bumblebees found in this area of the country, from like Pennsylvania all the way around to Wisconsin. So now critically endangered, extremely rare to find. If you find a rusty patched bumblebee, it's a very good day. How you landscape determines how much carbon your property can pull from the atmosphere and stores it in plants in the soil. This is a mature white oak. I can't even begin to tell you how much carbon that thing can store. But I remember doing the math one time, a fun little game. How many oak trees per year would I need to plant to offset my entire carbon footprint? It was only about 50 because the lifespan of these and how much carbon they can pull out. Think about that. So, if you have one mature oak like that, that's about a week's worth of your carbon footprint it can take out. And your plant choices determine whether you're harboring ecological tumors. Here's the Bradford pear again. I love this photo. It'll show you the problem with Bradford pears.
Oh, gee.
That is common. You want a really, really nice example of this? Go back on the New Germany trade line, go right down the road to New Germany trade line and trade line. That entire corner lot is infested. Take a left, continue down trade line, where it runs into Dayton Yellow Springs. Look right, that whole lot is infested. These are invasive species. And we'll talk about why those are so problematic. Because how you landscape determines whether you're using plants that host the insects that support the food web or not. That's a wide-eyed vireo. It's a migratory. We have, he'll show back up in about a month. They're beautiful. So one of Doug Tallamy's students at one point did a research study
And they were trying to study chickadee populations in suburban Washington, D.C. And they found something really interesting in the study. The main part of the study came out was that when native plants comprise less than 70% of the species in an area, chickadee populations cannot be sustained and their populations decline. But one of the interesting things they found was due to the cameras that they had on the nest box or the nest boxes, because they're cavity dwellers, was that chickadee parents feed their kids 400 to 700 times a day for a period of about 15 to 18 days. And all they're feeding is what you see this little guy feeding is caterpillar. So they need about 500 to 700 caterpillars a day. One pair of chickadees. They don't leave an area larger than about 2 acres. And I liken it to this. I have a kid. Thankfully, he doesn't eat 500 to 700 times a day, albeit it does feel like it. If I had to feed him 500 to 700 times a day and had to go to Kroger to do it, I would put our house inside the Kroger. That is kind of what these birds do. They have to live somewhere that has enough food for them. So now take my neighbor's property, I'll withhold his name, he has 3 acres directly behind me. He has all turf lawn, 1 invasive Bradford pear, 1 invasive burning bush, no native trees, all turf lawn. Where does 1 single pair of chickadees find 700 caterpillars on that property for 18 days straight? His property is 3 acres large, and he cannot sustain a single pair of chickadees. This is why we have 3 billion fewer birds than we used to have. And he is, 1 person. But when you multiply that, look on Google Earth, look at the same thing. Drive down through neighborhoods like that photo I showed you. Look at the new development going in on Trayvine. What was the first thing they did? They clear cut every tree, scraped the topsoil. And then I laughed when they put in a few of the trees, and I could tell they weren't even native. So why do native plants matter? Well, species co-evolve. They don't happen in a vacuum. 90% of insects co-evolve with a plant. And so the one example you're probably all familiar with is monarchs. What does everyone always say plant for monarchs? Milkweed. Milkweed, and there's lots of types of milkweed. There's here in this area of the country, common, swamp, butterfly, world. If you take any of those this summer, go find one and break its stems or its leaves, and it'll secrete a white substance. That is a glue. Most plants do not want to be defoliated by caterpillars. So they come up with physical or chemical defenses. In the case of the milkweed, it came up with a glue-like substance in it. That will glue the mouth shut of almost any insect who tries to consume it. But about 12 species of Lepidoptera have figured out a way around that, and monarchs are one. So while I showed you a picture of a monarch and an aster, that's because that's an adult monarch eating the pollen, and it can do that of many flowers, but it will never lay its larva on an aster. It will always lay its larva on a monarch, on the milkweed. So if you literally do not have milkweed, you will literally never have monarchs. This is why when species plants go extinct, animals follow. When we used to have the American chestnut, which made up 25% of the trees of the eastern seaboard, went primarily extinct. You'll never see a chestnut. There are very few of them remaining due to the Chinese chestnut block. 5 species of Lepidoptera went extinct. They completely rely on that species. So you have to plant the things that create food that the insect or the birds need. It's not just birds. This is just why I use birds as such a good example. And we use caterpillars a lot because caterpillars convert more energy from a plant into protein than any other creature. And that's why birds devour, because they're just like little protein cannons. And so you have to have Lepidoptera, but you need food webs, and food webs are reliant on native plants. So when you have a white oak is the granddaddy of them all. It can support over 900 species of Lepidoptera. Bradford pear can support less than 5. Ginkgo trees can support less than 5. Burning bushes can support less than 5. So when you have all these, honeysuckle. When you have these invasive species, there's nothing living on. People go, I see the birds living in them. I'm like, well, I mean, they're like hiding in the leaves and making a nest, but they're not feeding them. It's just like a hollow shell. It's like a house built of, gift wrap. It's nothing there for them. They can just hide in it. Right out here, boxwoods, right behind us. They're useless. They don't sustain any life. So this is a problem everywhere we look, is we've planted everything that does not sustain life. And then we wonder why the monarchs are going away, why the bobwhites are going away. So how you landscape and how much lawn you have determines, and your own plant choices will help determine how much life the earth can sustain. No clue what that crazy little caterpillar is. So we think this is an awesome responsibility at Homegrown National Park, as we start this movement to encourage people to plant native and remove invasives, and you don't have to have experience. I surely did when I first started. It doesn't take a whole lot to cut a tree down that's invasive or remove a honeysuckle. You don't have to, ask for permission. I guess if it's someone else's property, you should probably ask for permission. I actually moved a lot of my neighbors' honeysuckle, and I did it without permission for 2 years before the cops were called on me. She lived in Seattle. But now she found out who I am, what I do, and she thanks me for it. So yeah, this is an awesome opportunity to be proactive, to plant native and to restore habitat. So collectively, property owners are the hope and future of conservation. So as I've said, the majority of land is now privately owned. Y'all are the landowners. The city is the landowner. There's no more, big swaths of land we can just go restore. It's not going to happen. And so this will create a drastic solution to the biodiversity crisis. We're trying to create a groundswell, not a top down. We would like some top down. I would love it if, our elected officials would make more policies and be more strict on banning invasive species. It's alarming to me that you can go to Home Depot and Lowe's and buy English ivy and burning bush. I mean, just terrible, terrible species. Or winter creeper. That's the one you see climbing all over trees on the side of bike paths. You can just go buy that at Lowe's. Yet it destroys what makes our country unique and what makes Ohio unique, and it destroys our biodiversity. So we have to start, I need to fix that slide, start a new habitat. Jeez, needs to have some better coffee. Who knows what that bird is, by the way? We have these year round. Yeah, I'm gonna start looking. We got some great biodiversity here. That's a yellow rumped warbler. It's a juvenile. When he turns around, his butt is yellow, and so that's the yellow rump of the warbler. But a lot of birds just call them butterbutts. So that is our mission statement: to motivate people everywhere to regenerate biodiversity by planting natives, removing invasives, and reshaping our relationship with nature. We encourage people to get on our HMP biodiversity map, where you commit to planting or removing some amount of invasives and planting natives. When I first got on 3 years ago, I said, we're going to restore half an acre of our 1.8. We're now at 0.9 acres. We have 30,000 square feet of wildflowers on our property, all native sedges and native grasses. We planted over 100 trees and shrubs, and it's been really fun. I watch it work every day on our property, and 38,000 people have joined me on the HMP biodiversity map, and we are just shy of 100,000 acres restored in our short 3 years. So it is working. That would make us the 40th largest national park, by the way. But we're losing 800,000 acres of habitat a year. That means 2.4 million in the 3 years we've existed. And our organization has only got people to restore 100,000. So we're not winning at the current rate. But we know we can make a difference. And we can do this faster than any other means if everybody takes it action. Here's what essentially we need landscapes to achieve ecologically. One, they have to support food webs. They have to sequester carbon. They have to clean and manage water. And they have to support pollinators. That's what every landscape should do, those 4 things. And by the way, this is not all or nothing movement. I still have grass. I have lots of grass. I overseed the grass I have. I don't longer fertilize it because that's just going to end up in our watershed and poison all of us. But I definitely have grass. My kids still run around it. My dog hits the frisbee, plenty of grass. But I didn't need 1.8 acres of grass. No one does. That was just a lot of time sitting on a lawnmower. It used to take me an hour 45. Still takes 45 minutes. It's still too much time. So now we have, a productive yard, and it's really fun to see. Let's see what's next. Yeah, it accomplishes none of those goals. And I think now, since we've gone on this journey, how rewarding it's been. Who knows what a clear-winged hummingbird moth is? A lot of people mistake them for hummingbirds because they're about the same size, rapid wing beat, but their wings are translucent and they're moths. And they're often found on bergamot. And I used to see them all the time at Pearl Spin. And we planted bergamot. And then I remember last summer, there they came. We found them in our yard. Somehow they find it. Last year was the first summer we had indigo buntings. nesting in our prairie. I found a goldfinch nest inside of goldenrods in our prairie. We planted tulip poplar, which is a wonderful native species. We found eastern tiger swallowtails, which use it as a larval host, and they're really cool. The caterpillars look like little snakes. And then at the end of the year, though, I couldn't find them. They had gotten large, and then I looked for their chrysalis all over the tree, and I couldn't find it. I Googled it. They were one of the species that at the end of the year, they fall into the leaf litter. So when you come by and you rake up all your leaves and you mow it all up to, make your yard look great for everyone else, well, you don't have eastern tiger swallowtails anymore because you just mowed them over. And that's the same for a lot of species. Luna moths. Luna moths are in heavy decline. They're the same. They hang out in the leaf litter. So we have to create habitat in our yard, and we've done it, and it's been super fun to watch. And it's fun to raise child in a habitat, and you can see how it works. We don't have to go to a national park, to a homegrown national park. And so, can we do this? Of course, we can do this. It's very easy. Prairie warblers migrate through here starting in about a month or so. You don't have to do this for a living. You can save biodiversity where you live, where you work, where you play, where you pray. Our schools have big landscapes. Our communities have big landscapes. Our churches have these massive turf lawns, and I mean that's church with a big C, religion with a big R. All the religions of the world have like environmental stewardship right in the scripture. And we're not being good stewards of our land when we have a turf lawn, when we have 6 Bradford pears. What is that saying for the world? So here's what we can do. We can shrink the lawns. Again, we still have tons of lawn. That's okay. You can add pollinator gardens. You can remove your invasive plants. You can add keystone plants. I'll talk about those in a sec. Turn off your lights at night. Lights on at night is just really not good. And there's ways if you insist on having a light on at night outside, they at least should have covers so they're pointed down. There's certain oh God, you can tell I'm not like what's it called? How many, not kelvins, lumens, thank you. There's certain ones that are a lot better than others. But really the best is none, or putting them on a timer. Like you've seen, it's like the moths, they fly around it. They don't really understand it, but all they know is that moths, their heads will be bent back and they can't escape it. That's why they're doing it. They're stuck, and they'll kill them. They'll just fly and fly and fly, and they'll use all their energy and die. It's a very big problem. And it messes up migratory birds. Nothing good from lights on outside at night. Fire and mosquito fogger. Mosquito foggers, 1, they don't work. 2, they kill everything. Literally everything. There's no mosquito fogger in the world that says, I can kill only the mosquitoes. It doesn't matter. They will kill the monarchs. They will kill every other insect with them. And then obviously get on the HMP biodiversity after you commit to that. I want to talk about keystone plants too. 14% of plant species are responsible for 90% of insects. So as I mentioned, the white oak earlier, the white oak is the granddaddy of them all, but that is also oaks in general, the genus Quercus. Oaks are very, very important, but there's also cherries, black cherries, the American plum, poplars, birches, hickories where we live. These are all very, very important species. They have outsized impact. So if you're unfamiliar with the idea of a keystone, it comes from an arch. You take out the keystone, the whole arch collapses. So keystone species are ones that have an outsized importance in their ecosystem. And the guy who discovered that in the 60s, it was cool. He was in the waters off of the coast of Washington. He went into these tidal basins and he found starfish in them. And he was like, what would happen if I took out the starfish? So he would drive, take a boat over to this island, hike across the island. He would do this almost every week. He would take all the starfish out of one of the tidal basins and launch them back into the ocean. But the other one he left. And what happened over time, over a few months, is the starfish was the apex predator in that little tidal pool. Without the apex predator, the mesopredator, which was the next one down, took over. So when that one took over, the biodiversity plummeted in the tidal basin. Their populations exploded and the biodiversity plummeted by 50%. He reintroduced the starfish. It controlled the mesopredator. Biodiversity increased again. And this is now why we always go, well, deer are such a problem. It's like, well, yeah, we got rid of, the bobcats and the lynxes. There's nothing controlling situation. So that's where the idea of keystone species came from, is species in an ecosystem that have outsized importance. In the world of flowers, this would be helianthus, your sunflowers, your asters, your goldenrods, your echinaceas. So when we encourage people to plant, we try to always encourage people to just start with keystones, because if you're going to just do one thing, pick one plant that has the most ability to support a food web. So even one plant can make a difference. And keystones are the backbone of an ecosystem and support the greatest number of species. And by doing this and planting keystones and focusing on what you can control in your property, it makes this problem something manageable for each one of us. It's really hard, when you think about the crises going on in the world. There's a lot of them. It can be very overwhelming. How does Brandon upstate the whales in Yellow Springs, Ohio? I really don't know. And if I dwell on it, it's going to make me upset. But there's biodiversity crises, and I know how I can solve it where I work or where I live. And so I do that. And that's my part of the quilt. I can't concern myself with other people's part of the quilt. I can just control what I can control. And that's how we do this. If everybody did that, it would work. That's a black-throated green warbler. So here's our call to action. We need to regenerate habitat, and we need you all to join the movement. And we want your towns, your schools, corporations, businesses, tribes, golf courses, land trusts, and organizations, all on the H&P biodiversity map, to commit to restoring habitat. And I would just like to remind everyone here, as a Rotarian first, that the environment is the seventh pillar of Rotary. We have a responsibility as Rotarians to ensure we're taking care of the environment. We're looking to partner with people always, and very candidly, my full-time job, because that's what I do. So I'm not all just, I'm a fundraiser, I'm a professional fundraiser. I spend probably 80% of my time trying to raise funds. We're very small. I'm the only full-time employee of H&B. So how we act now will determine nature's fate. I hope you guys know that. As a cardinal, I would like to say to the legislators in this room, 7 states of Northern Cardinal is the state bird. We can do better. Love the Northern Cardinal. Come on, either the other 6 need to change or we change. We gotta be different. And so, and ultimately it impacts our planet. So I want to end on one quick story here. Last March, my wife had a conference in Hawaii. Who knows what this is? See one? This view? Diamond Head. We're on top of Diamond Head here. That little ham there is a hunter. He was 1 year old when we took this. I had just gotten laid off, so it was perfect. I had all the time in the world, so I joined and brought Hunter with me. And when we were done, we went over to the Big Island, and I told Ashley when we went, I wanted to see one bird species. That bird species is called a palila. This is us looking for the palila on the Big Island. In the distance, you're actually looking across the ocean mountain behind me, or in front of me, I guess. That would be Kilauea over on Oahu. We're on Mauna Kea on the Big Island, at like, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 feet. And these trees and shrubs you see around me are called mamanes. Mamanes are the species of which the palila has evolved to use. It eats the fruits of them, and it lays its eggs in those trees. It's the only species it uses. Palilas are in the family of honey creepers. Everyone talks about Darwin's finches. The honey creepers are a better example. They got blown away in the storm probably 4 to 7 million years ago, landed on Hawaii, and they were like, not bad, this works. And when you're the only species on an island that you just showed up to, adaptive radiation occurs. Ecological niches are exploited, and you get new species. And so the honey creepers fanned out and formed dozens of species over the millions of years. And then humans showed up in the 1200s in the form of the Polynesians, and then the English and the Europeans showed up in the 1800s. And what has happened is over 70 species of birds have gone extinct. Lots of other things that have gone extinct. A lot of reasons for it with the honey creepers. And one is also avian malaria, which was introduced when the Europeans arrived, because all the birds of the world had been exposed to avian malaria, except the birds of Hawaii had no resistance to it, and it's still crushing them to this day. But at least for the ones that hung out at higher altitude, malaria was not a problem because mosquitoes don't go to high altitude. But climate change is changing that, and the mosquitoes are traveling higher and higher. So the palila, which used to be found on multiple islands, is now found only on the Big Island, only in an area of 9 square miles. There are fewer than 700 left in the wild. So We went to this tiny little area 3 different times. It's a saddle road between Hilo and Kona. You have to take a dirt road on a 4x4 vehicle for miles to find this tiny little parking lot. We walked around 3 different times for a total of 5 hours. And the second to last day we were there, I said, Ashley, do you mind if I go back tomorrow morning? I'll leave before sunrise. I'll get there right at sunrise. I'll live for 2 hours, and then I promise I'll come back and I'll join you for breakfast. She did. And so I didn't see one. We didn't see one together. I didn't see one alone. I never heard one. And I was really, really disappointed when I left because I count my birds, I wanted the Palila. I wanted to add it to my list, but it wasn't about me. It wasn't that I didn't see a Palila. It's because I know Hunter will never have the chance to see a Palila. Palilas used to be common, and now they're marching rapidly towards extinction. They'll be probably what we call extinct in the wild. They'll hang out in zoos and stuff and just barely kept alive. Hunter may not grow up to give a damn about Palilas and may never want to see one, but he should be allowed to choose that fate. We should not be choosing that for him, and that's what we're doing when we have big turf lawns, when we plant all these invasive species. We are robbing the future of the ability to choose, and it's just not something that sits right with me. So this is a Hunter being ham at a national wildlife refuge a few months back. He loves birds. He can identify about 50 already. We walk out of the yard and he'll just hear a blue jay and say, blue jay. And I'm like, damn, he can do it by call. He just turned 2 last weekend. And so I didn't show you, by the way, this is a Palila. These are Palilas on my shirt. Beautiful bird. I really hope Hunter gets to see him someday. And Mark. So that's it.
Sir, Brandon, is there a reliable, trustworthy website that can give folks information as to what invasive species, plants and things are, what they look like, and what would be native?
Yeah, there's a couple of resources. One, there's a great app. All these are free, by the way. iNaturalist. iNaturalist is such a cool app. Take the photo, then click location and let it just geolocate you, and it'll tell you like what it thinks that species is. And now they don't tell you if it's invasive or not. They just like ID it for you, which is still extremely helpful. But really, like in this area, the ones 99% of people want honeysuckle, Bradford pears. Right behind those are going to be privet, your English ivies, and your winter creepers, the vines that grow through the ground, buckthorn. But I mean, really here, like honest to God, if you were controlling your Bradford pears and honeysuckle, that's 90% of the battle here right now. As for identifying native species or finding native species, our website, we have under our resources, finding native plants, and we didn't create one because so many other great orgs have created them, like Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center, Audubon Society. You just essentially like go to one of theirs, and again, we just link to all of them, and you put like where you're at, what time of year you want it to bloom. Do you want a shrub, or do you want a tree, or do you want flowers, what height, what color? And it'll say these are all your species that are available. Now the downside is a lot of those aren't always common to find, especially like good luck finding your natives at Lowe's and Home Depots. There are native nurseries, but that's why we do have some keystone guides on our website where you put where you're at, and it'll download a PDF for you of trees and shrubs that are keystones to your area. And we have one called container planting because we have a lot of people in apartments and stuff, but all of those can go in the ground too. And we specifically chose not only keystone species, but keystone species we know people can find easily available, because we didn't want to recommend species that are great but you can't find. So yeah, homegrownnationalpark.org has a great list of resources.
Creek County Parks and Trails, as well as Beavercreek Wetlands Association, will give you the picture of what you're looking at, without all the other intellectual stuff.
Sir, so, not to say climate change, but any of us that does any planting at home, over the years, the planting zoning is changing. So is there any native species that can no longer be supported in this environment because
No, that's a really good question because we've seen the USDA hardiness zones change. Native plants don't really focus on hardiness zones. They use the EPA ecoregions. which are different, because species have evolved here, so they're usually pretty good to these fluctuations, and they're not big enough yet. But what we have seen is species that are like marching north, which is kind of common, as the climate changes. And so you've also seen this in like birds, like cardinals have expanded their range, Carolina wrens have expanded their range, they're taking advantage of these changes in climate. But right now, at least for a lot of native plants, it's not problematic yet. The changing in hardiness zones definitely matters a bit more for the vegetable gardeners of the world, because you're planting species that are technically not native, when you're talking vegetable gardens and stuff. So,
Yeah, I hope kudzu doesn't get the wind of that.
kudzu is kind of coming this way.
In Kentucky, you drive through Kentucky and what used to be beautiful areas of trees, and I mean, it's just kudzu.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
This is why people too, when they go, well, X is not, birds don't know property lines. When you plant something, it's not your property. They don't care. People tell me burning bush is an invasive all the time. I'm like, come hike with me through the woods. I'll show you burning bush, because birds will find it and they will take it with them. It is a problem. Are there any other questions? I think I got like one more.
So because a lot of businesses are the whole like what's in it for me kind of deal. So the golf club was to pull all these trees out. There was a financial cost to do it. Have you seen any businesses be able to utilize resources, funding, grants to fund those projects, or after they've done it, be able to utilize that project for funding in the future?
Yeah, there are a lot of grants, especially at state level. Usually, at least, there's a lot more not for like this kind of work, but especially like if you have big scale invasive removal, state has grants available. And federal government has like what's the CSR, Conservation Reserve Program, CRP, where you can put like huge tracts of farmland. But that for the businesses, not as much. It's more just doing it because it's what's right. And we also advocate, because we understand it has cost implications. Yeah, you don't have to do everything at once. But like the Bradford Fair should probably be the priority. You take care of that. And then in a few years, when we redo the front, we'll do the burning or the boxwoods next. So break it into pieces, and that way it's a lot better in that regard. Sir.
Are we losing any species because of the big loss of ash trees because of the emerald ash borer?
I can't tell you specifically about the how many species are specific to that tree. I mentioned examples of species that were specific, like if you want a zebra tiger swallowtail, you have to have pawpaw. So if you lost the pawpaw, you would lose the zebra tiger swallowtail. I can assure you there are species associated with ash trees, with elm trees, and they're declining. Beech trees are now starting to decline heavily. I can't name the species off the top of my head because I'm not an entomologist, but I would bet like these things don't happen in isolation. When you lose one thing, you lose the other. Is there anything else?
There's also moths, depending on.
Yeah.
Not only just birds.
Yeah, oh yeah, the moss, the whole food web. The last thing I would challenge is Pete Landrum and Don Adams aren't here. Darn them. It is like a personal goal of mine. I would like to see all of the Bradfords gone, done fair, but I think it's a terrible look for our community when our state has banned them, when you can't sell them, buy them, propagate them, distribute them. And the main drag of our community is highlighting them. We're the place we meet every day, is highlighting them. It's a scourge, and it's only just starting. They've only become invasive in the last 15, 20 years. So they're just warming up, and we need to do everything we can right now. So I hope that the leaders in this room would pressure people. I gotta get back in touch with you. You emailed me last, it's my turn. But we have an opportunity to do some stuff and to lead by example. And there's a lot of communities from San Francisco at the big end to tiny communities like Taconic, New York, doing these things. And we should definitely be in front of that charge. So I'm always happy to talk more about this. I'm extremely passionate about it.
Can't tell.
Yeah, can't tell. Thank you all.
So I don't know about you, but I want to have a program in the future with just playing bird noises and having Hunter identify them. That would be entertaining. Okay, if you will rise for the pledge, I'll tell you that our next week's program is Steve Fine, who's going to talk to us about skin cancer detection. Today we are donating a book on birds to the Greene County Community Library in honor of our speaker. And please, Charles Curran and Chief Fiorita are readers next week. And keep an eye on all our outlets to see what's going on. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't know, I'm not so again. I don't know, I just don't understand or something. He's not getting more. Well, he's for me,